All right, well, thanks for coming. Appreciate you being here. We're going to talk today about nervous system reboot. And I know y'all just heard me say my relationship story. It's a real thing. Once you're in a stressful situation, you don't always realize how bad it is until you remove yourself from it and you finally get a chance to breathe, and how much it's affecting your whole entire life. So we're going to talk about that and some things that we can do to help reboot our nervous system and regulate ourselves and feel better. So what we're going to focus on today is micro practices for better mood and better health. Most people think they're bad at coping, but really it's just that your nervous system's constantly in overdrive. And why it matters is because we're constantly surrounded by overstimulation. There's people talking to us all the time. Our phones are dinging all the time. How many times have we seen people in the middle of a conversation and your phone goes off and they're like, 15 years ago, we were not doing that. We were having face-to-face organic conversations with people that were relatively uninterrupted, unless you had toddlers. And I don't think that ever changes because it's like a mom thing. You're talking and you're like, okay, hold on, honey. Okay, go to the potty. You're good. Okay. But anyway, what were you saying? It's just what we do, but that's a different kind of stress. It's different than the constant pull. Hi, come on in. No, you're okay. Different than the constant pull that we have from all the different stimulation around us. And so, again, modern life keeps us overstimulated. Chronic stress, in turn, impacts our health in so many ways. Mood, sleep, digestion, energy, and we're just functioning in survival mode, or we're over-functioning in survival mode. And the symptoms of that manifest themselves in a lot of different ways. Fatigue, irritability, anxiety, brain fog, poor sleep. And it might not manifest immediately, but over time you start to look at yourself in the mirror and you're thinking, why do I have these chronic bags under my eyes? Why is my hair falling out? Why do my joints hurt all the time? And a lot of times it is because we're in constant overstimulation mode. We're in constant stress. So we think, okay, how can we regulate our nervous system to come down from that? What can we do? When we talk about the nervous system, there's two main protective systems, two main nervous systems that operate. One is the sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight or flight. When a stimulus comes in and you feel an adrenaline or you feel like your heart is fluttering, that is the fight or flight. Stress response, increased heart rate. It's protective. It's meant to make us run when we feel danger. It is meant to sometimes provide excitement. We were talking about being up in Michigan. A fight or flight situation protected me. The last night we were up at the cabin at the lake, or at the river, I decided I wanted to go out and watch the sunrise, which we'll talk about morning sunlight. It's extremely important. I was trying to get some, morning sunlight, be out there, and I wanted to watch the sunrise in the hammock. So I took blankets out and I was laying in the hammock and I was laying, there all peacefully. I happened to turn my head and there was a big black bear that was probably where Abigail was sitting. And I was like, that's not the greatest thing for me to see right now. And I know everybody says don't run when you see a bear. But I was thinking, if I stay here in the hammock, I'm literally going to be a ham hock in a net laying here for this bear to come eat me. And I can probably close the gap from where I'm at to the cabin in maybe 2 seconds, so I'm gonna run. So I literally flopped out, and for some silly reason, I grabbed all the covers that I had with me, and I ran up to the deck, and I went in and shut the door. And my husband at the time was coming out, and he was like, "What's going on?" I said, "There's a bear." So the fight or flight right then kicked in. It is innate. It happened so quickly. It protected me, probably saved my life, and it's a good thing. But if we're constantly living in that brace moment and that overdrive, then you can imagine the things that it does to you, because when you have a moment like that and you're finally coming down off of it, you're like, okay, let me peel my heart off the ceiling. We can't live in that constant state. So we have to be aware that when we are in that state, why are we there? What can we do to bring ourselves out of it? So then we talk about the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's the opposite. That's your rest, digest, and heal, your recovery mode, your emotional regulation. When we're sitting there and we're breathing and we're like, okay, we're calming ourselves down. That's the parasympathetic nervous system kicking in. And when we talk about being in chronic stress, you have to remove yourself from the constant overstimulation of the sympathetic nervous system in order to heal, because you can't heal where you're being constantly hurt, essentially. So chronic side effects of stress is going to be your sleep will be disrupted. Your hormones will be totally out of balance. Blood pressure is going to be out of whack. Your digestion is going to be off. You could be swinging back and forth between, having loose stools to constipation, and you could go back and forth between that. Or you could stay in constipation. You could stay in, the other end. A lot of times when we go on vacation, some people are backed up for a week, and that's your body on the underside reacting to new stimulus. And it's a little bit of a stress. Some stress can be good, but our body's noticing the change, and it's like, okay, I'm going to just shut some stuff down for right now, or I'm going to turn it into overdrive one way or the other. So that's a kind of an interesting way to think about it. But your body recognizes these things even if the brain doesn't recognize it. Blood sugar is another one. Cortisol, that is something that plays a part into a blood sugar response. A lot of times if, we have somebody in the ER that comes in and they're not a diabetic, but they've just had something traumatic happen to them. If they're in a car accident or they've experienced a big laceration or something that has really scared them, and we'll run their blood work, a lot of times we'll see an extremely elevated blood sugar. Well, not critically high, but definitely high for someone that's not a diabetic. And then they'll say, well, why is my blood sugar high? I'm not a diabetic. That is the cortisol. That's the adrenal glands bumping that glucose up. Again, protective, which is good, but it can't stay that way because then everything is in overdrive. Mood, obviously, we are much more short-fused when we're super stressed, and when our nervous system is in overdrive, we're snapping at people. We don't mean to. Sometimes we can't get control of it, and it's because there's things that are going on around us all the time that cause us to be short, that cause us to have that overdrive going on. And then immunity. Once these things set in and they are long-term, they can start to affect the way that your body produces a response to infection. And it can have a suppression of your infection-fighting cells, the white blood cells, and things along those lines. So those are long-term. That's something more long-term and systemic, but we definitely do see it. And so as we were talking about, your nervous system was designed for temporary stress, but not nonstop stimulation. So if we have the nonstop stimulation, then we're definitely going to see some of those health side effects. But the good news is that your nervous system is trainable. We can absolutely train it. We can do some intentional things to bring these responses down. But you don't need a perfect routine. You don't need some huge retreat. You don't need to stop and go on a cruise, although we would all love to. But cruises are not always, unstressful. Travel can be stressful for people. You don't need endless free time. What you do need is awareness, and you need repetition and small daily tasks. Whoops. So we're going to do something together. If you were in my last talk, breathing was a big part of what we did, but it has so many biological benefits to it. So we're going to do something together. This is something that we can do when we are about to go into something stressful, when we are having a stressful response, when we're feeling a wave of grief, when we're feeling a wave of nervousness. So this is the physiological sigh. So what we're going to do, we're all going to do this together. We're going to inhale through the nose. Everybody do it with me. And you hold, and then you're going to take a long, slow exhale. We're going to do this one more time. Inhale through the nose. Hold it. And breathe out through the mouth. And we do this, and it regulates the nervous system. It regulates our body. It tells our vagus nerve to calm down. And if you have a high heart rate when you go into this, if you do this several times, you will notice that heart rate starts to come down. Along those lines, we're going to talk about the vagus nerve and some interesting things about that. So if you do any holistic studies, there are some people that say, the vagus nerve is a big mind-body connection. What it is that it's a nerve bundle that lives in the back of our throat. And so sometimes if you get in a spike of adrenaline, you can feel almost like a spiciness in the back of your throat, or you feel a tightness in your throat or your chest. That's vagal nerve stimulation. And it can be something that helps us go into that fight or flight mode, but can also help us calm down. And so it's your body's calming communicating pathway. It supports digestion, big heart rate regulation, big emotional balance. And so some practices to regulate the vagus nerve is by slow breathing, which is one we just talked about. Humming is another way to regulate your vagus nerve. It might be annoying to other people, but if you find yourself alone, you can hum to yourself. Singing, laughing, nature, social connection. Sometimes you just feel this calming effect. Another interesting thing is when we've treated people with something called SVT, which is like a high heart rate, a lot of times it's an overdrive of the vagus nerve. And so one of the things that we'll try to do without medicine is we will have them bear down. And for those that don't know, one of the ways that you can feel your vagus nerve working is if you're going to the bathroom and you're having a bowel movement and you push really hard. When you let up, you almost feel like your heart going boom, boom, boom. That's because when you bear down and you like that, or you hold your breath, you're stimulating that vagus nerve. You're almost doing a pause or a reset. And so that's one way to reset. And I'm not saying, hold your breath or bear down, but I'm telling you that's a way that you can feel where the vagus nerve is and how it relates to the mind and the body and how it has the effect on your heart. Okay, we're going to do another orienting exercise. Sometimes when we are in overdrive in the nervous system, sometimes grounding ourselves to find things that we know are definite, they're permanent, they're here, things that we know to be true can definitely be orienting. So what I want you to do is slowly look around the room, find a color that you recognize, look at the light fixture, don't stare straight into it, but objects, exit doors, windows, things that we know are not going to go away. They're there, they're permanent, we can see them, we know that they are something that is in front of us. And then you pause and you take a deep breath. It sounds silly sometimes to say, yep, it's a table, or yes, that's a chair, or yep, that's Abigail, or yes, that's the door. But our brain recognizes these things as orienting. One of the things that I've talked about before is when COVID happened and the world was turned upside down and everything was disorienting, everyone was super confused. My son was home from school. He was very scared. We were all scared. And one of the things that I would do with him is I would say, okay, every night we would say, let's talk about the things that we know are true. And he said, well, you're my mom. Well, this is our house. Well, the sun was going to come up today. The sun's going to set, the moon, the things that we knew for sure we could count on, we would talk about those things. And it would bring him back to center. It would calm him down. It would reassure him that, yes, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. Yes, there's a lot of things that feel very scary. But there's some things here that I know are absolutely to be true. And that provided a lot of calming and a lot of reorientation for him. So I think that's a good exercise that people can remember to do is when things feel crazy and out of touch, remember what you know to be permanent and in front of you. Another thing that we can talk about is micro practices that work. So some things to re-regulate and some habits to build. Step outside for natural sunlight. Natural, unfiltered sunlight does amazing things for your body. And I'm not talking about through sunglasses. I'm not talking about, through a window. If the best thing for you is to get outside, to get exposed to natural sunlight for at least 5 to 10 minutes on a sunny day in the morning or 15 to 30 minutes on a cloudy day. And what this, kind of getting ahead of myself, but what this does is it helps our eyes realize, okay, it's daytime, I'm going to wake up. It starts the cortisol response in a good way. It's kind of almost like a coffee, but it also sets the circadian rhythm into motion for the rest of the day and also helps you regulate your body's response to stress. So natural sunlight is amazing. Relax your jaw and shoulders. A lot of us don't realize that we're clenching. So if we're having a moment where we feel overly stressed, we can take stock of, am I clenching my teeth? Okay, I got to relax that. Okay, I need to literally sit here and unclench my fists. Longer exhales, short walks, stretching, hydration, hugs and connection. I mean, it's almost like a recharge for your battery. So small resets really do matter. Morning sunlight, again, helps you wake the brain up naturally, stimulates light-sensitive retinal cells, stimulates dopamine activity, cortisol timing, circadian signaling. If you can, first thing in the morning, get up, open the shades, and get that sunlight coming in. Better yet, if you can go out and sit on the deck for a few minutes and let that natural sunlight come in, you will start to notice that if you do this before looking at your phone, that's going to provide other stresses and pull you in directions that maybe you don't want to go. You will notice a difference, and you will notice your nervous system starting to reset in a much better way. Movement is another thing. Again, cortisol regulation, better sleep, mood stabilization, reduced anxiety, and it can be anything. It can be walking, stretching, it can be yoga, it could be dancing around the kitchen, it could be just, jumping up and down, it can just be, wiggling your body for a moment. I mean, as silly as that feels, just sitting here and just shaking things out or just letting it out like that. If you think about Qigong, that's a practice. One of the movements that they do is just bringing it down. And you do that a few times and you're just shaking off the stress. These things have been done for years, hundreds of centuries, and there's a reason for it. It's because you're letting that tension go. Sleep and recovery. I'm a huge proponent of really good sleep hygiene, and what that means is protecting your sleep, making sure that you're getting adequate sleep, that your sleep environment is healthy. No TVs that are on, no lights that are on in the room. Lots of children, unfortunately, are sleeping with movies on, and then we wonder why they're not able to pay attention in school or why they're overstimulated. Dark room, cool, nice pillows and blankets. If you have a snoring partner, you probably want to get that addressed. Things like that. And because if we have poor sleep over a period of time, we're going to start to notice these stressful effects that we talked about that put you into overdrive. And so helpful habits, consistent sleep schedule, less screen time, slower evenings, morning sunlight, all of those are good things. Emotional regulation doesn't mean that you're never stressed. It means that you take stock of how you're feeling and what we can do about it. Doesn't mean being calm all the time. Talks about, it means recovering faster, responding instead of reacting, taking a moment to not be so reactive when we respond to someone, and staying connected to yourself and letting yourself really think about, why do I feel the way that I feel, and do I really need to give an answer? Can I just sit for a moment and sit in silence, or can I give a short answer and let that be enough? So thinking about how we're staying connected to ourselves. Tension release scan, last little exercise. We talked about this a little bit. So noticing the tension, you're going to take a moment and you're going to say, okay, do I have tension in my jaw? If I do, I'm going to release that. And sometimes that's opening the mouth. Shoulders, let the shoulders down. A lot of us walk around like this and we don't even know that we're doing it. Hands, stomach, hips, all the things. What are we doing? What are we doing on a regular basis where we're constantly carrying that stress? And if we find that, intentionally release that. Do those deep breathing exercises that we talked about and let that go. And then once you've done that, that will start to work for your nervous system. And then you can think, okay, why am I feeling this way? What can I do to further remove myself from that situation and regulate this further? Not always possible to remove it, but if we have these little mini micro habits that can help us exist within the stress and not let it overtake us and affect us in a health way. So building your own reset routine, all you got to do is just choose maybe 2 to 3 small practices. Say, okay, I'm going to commit to the morning sunlight thing. Do it for a week and see if it makes a difference. Deep breaths before meetings or stressful events. Stretching before bed, less phone time in the morning. Reading a book at night instead of looking at your phone, or in the morning. Getting up instead of snoozing. This is massive. I can't wait to do my sleep lecture. I'm huge on sleep hygiene, and the cycle that your brain goes into when you choose snoozing over actually getting up is detrimental for the rest of the day. So choosing to actually say, okay, the alarm went off, sit up, have a moment, open the curtains, and get on with your day makes a huge difference, and that sets your nervous system up for a response that would be better for the rest of the day, rather than that crazy alarm noise that goes off 3, 4, 5 times, however many you let it do, and then you go back into this short REM cycle, and then you get jerked out of it again. That's a terrible way to start your day. And so if we commit to saying, nope, when the alarm goes off, I'm up, then we're regulating our nervous system that way. The thing is that consistency beats intensity. So it doesn't have to be these big, huge, intense moments that we're having. It's just being consistent with whatever we choose. The other thing is you don't have to earn rest. You don't have to say, well, I worked so hard today, now I get to finally rest. Take a moment to rest. Take a moment to breathe and do these relaxation techniques, these moments to regulate your nervous system. Your nervous system is always trying to protect you. That's what it's designed to do. But if it's always in overdrive, then eventually an engine that's running at full speed is going to have some problems. Goal is not perfection, it's just to be consistent. Learn how to come back to yourself more quickly, more often. Small resets, repeated often. Those are things that we want you to focus on. That is my presentation for you today. Does anyone have any questions or any comments or anything they would like to add? Anybody? It's okay if you don't. Anybody? Yes, please. Of course.
Just thinking back, like I have a child with autism, and so like transitions were always really difficult. When she was younger, there was a lot of behavioral challenges, and everyone was like, you need to do like heavy, like you need to have her like move in boxes, like heavy work to like reset her system.
Interesting.
Is that something that you found is like helpful for adults for resetting their nervous system? I never really like looked into it too much, but like also like deep pressure thing, like sensory deep pressure.
Sensory, yes. The repetitive things, honestly, I found that more helpful for people that are beyond that, such as Parkinson's or dementia, or people that need orientation that way. A lot of times, if we've had patients that are very disoriented, we'll give them a pile of towels to fold, and they really enjoy doing that. It gives them a purpose. They like to do the repetitive motion. I don't think it wouldn't be a bad thing. I don't necessarily know that I would do heavy, but you know, if it gives them a purpose, it gives them a focus to focus in on, I think that's definitely helpful. I used to work at a summer camp, and there was one child that was ADHD, constantly in overdrive. And I had to call his dad and say, because a lot of parents will take their kids off of Adderall for the summer. They'll just take them off, and they're like, here you go, to have fun with the kids. And so I couldn't redirect this kid no matter what I tried to do. So I called the dad, and I was like, give me some things that work for you. And he actually recommended something similar to what you said. He's like, well, I usually just give him a hammer and nails, and I let him pound on stuff. And I was like, well, I love that, but we're not doing that here at camp. So I had a gigantic earth ball, the big, huge earth ball, and I needed it blown up. So I decided to ask this child, would you like to help me blow this ball up? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. So I gave him a pump. He spent an hour jumping on the pump. Yay, 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 an hour blowing that ball up. Blew the entire thing up, was happy as could be, and was pretty regulated for the rest of the day. So I do think if you have a child that is extremely hyper-focused in that way, and they can come back to their sense of self by, you know, doing a task like that, I think that's great. It really would come down to knowing your kid and knowing how they respond to things. But also, you know, the reorientation, like I was talking about, where we're going to talk about things that we know are true. We're going to talk about things that, you know, I can see this chair, you're my mom, the sun. That helps. I mean, my son doesn't have ADHD or autism, but I do think that it would be helpful for anyone. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you guys being here, and I hope to see you next time.